I'll just start. I look forward to taking a few questions, but I'll just start by wishing Prime Minister Takaichi a happy birthday. It is her birthday today. We had a pre-birthday celebration at the end of a very constructive and interesting dinner last night. But alors, on peut prendre quelques questions maintenant. Alors, yep, please.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for this opportunity. I'm Satpal Johar from Delhi Education.
Okay.
So my question for you is about social media security.
Could you?
So to protect children from social media harmful apps,
Right.
countries have started introducing a ban
Yes.
for children under 16. Do you think Canada should also take the same step?
Well, it's an interesting, thank you for the question, and of course we're coming here from Australia, which in many respects pioneered this approach. An age of majority, to put it another way, when do you get to an age and you fully participate in? I think this is something that merits an open and considered debate in Canada. I don't have a settled view on it. There are arguments in both directions, and now there's more and more experience with it, albeit on a relatively short term. To be clear, we're in a position, though, as a country where our legislation, the Canadian government's legislation with respect to online harms, the exploitation of children, is lagging. It's lagging because of there was a series of legislation which, for a variety of reasons, did not pass. And so there is a need to, at minimum, catch up, in my judgment, the judgment of the government, catch up to that. I think naturally this issue of an age of majority would be part of the consideration of that. But it is all of these issues are fundamental issues, and they need to have open consideration, and the parliamentary process is the right one in order to have that. But thank you for the question. Mr. Chase.
Hi. Good morning. On Iran,
Yes.
I want to ask you, your Chief of the Defense Staff said the other day that Canada may be called upon to defend the Gulf states and that military options are under consideration. So just in the interest of transparency, what kind of capabilities would we be able to offer the Gulf states? We talked about airlift, ship patrols, anti-air, and would Canadians, maybe it goes without saying, but would Canadians be placed in harm's way in any conflict assistance?
Well, the first thing, thanks for the question, Steve, Mr. Chase. The first thing is that we have not received any request for such assistance. First point. Second point, as you know, in this conflict, we were not consulted before it began. We're not engaged in the conflict. We do not intend to engage. What we are doing, where we are engaged, is dealing with the consequences of the conflict, consequences that continue to spread in the region and to some extent beyond into the Indo-Pacific region, obviously with the naval incident, to put it mildly, in the last 36 hours. So dealing with those consequences very much goes first and foremost to the Canadians in the region, protecting the Canadians. If the Canadians wish to leave the region, assistance with that, I can answer in more detail on that if that's the interest. So we have not yet received any requests. I don't necessarily anticipate those requests. We're in very close dialogue. I'm in dialogue with a number of leaders in the region who are partners, obviously Minister of Foreign Affairs and others. So, and any decision would obviously be taken by the government, not by the armed forces.
En français, M. Carney, dans quel contexte est-ce que le Canada pourrait intervenir militairement et de quoi est-ce que cette contribution pourrait avoir l'air?
Premièrement, cet conflit, la décision pour ce conflit, c'était la décision des États-Unis et Israël. Il n'y a pas de consultation avec le Canada et pas d'autres alliés des États-Unis, premièrement. Nous ne sommes pas engagés dans le conflit actuel. Nous mettons l'emphase sur la santé des Canadiens et qui sont dans la région, dans un conflit qui continue d'élargir. Y a-t-il des contextes où on peut aider, premièrement, une alliée de l'OTAN dans une manière défensive? Oui, on peut imaginer des contextes, mais il n'y a pas de contexte actuel maintenant. Et il faut souligner pour les autres partenaires, des partenaires dans leur région, il n'y a pas de requête pour le Canada, pas de demande pour le Canada de les aider. Il y a des exemples d'autres pays qui aident avec des matériels, des avions, tout cela, mais c'est pas une question pour le Canada. C'est pas une question pour le Canada pour le moment. Nous sommes engagés, mais nous sommes engagés afin de protéger les Canadiens et les Canadiens. Merci.
Prime Minister Brian
Yeah.
Clapp with Bloomberg. Just a couple of questions on trade. I assume you'll probably be talking to Japanese automakers today, so what will be your message to them on U.S. trade? And furthermore, can you just give us a status update after Minister LeBlanc's meeting today? There was an announcement that USTR put out an announcement they're starting a first round of trade talks with Mexico, but I've not seen that with Canada yet. So what should we make of that? Is this already a divide and conquer attempt, or what is the status of Canada's trade?
Well, let's say a couple of things. Let me start with the last bit, Brian, which is that the discussions, and I received one step removed, partly because of time zones, a debrief of Minister LeBlanc's discussions with his counterpart, Mr. Greer. They're constructive, substantive discussions. That's not surprising because beneath the surface, over the course of the last 12 months, there's been an exchange on a number of issues, so-called trade irritants, so more specific issues, as well as the big structural issues. So this was an advancement of that. There's also a commitment to pick up that conversation certainly in the next week. I think it's listed officially, or his comments were in the coming days. As I say, I haven't spoken directly to Minister LeBlanc. That's the first point. The second is the President of the United States has said on a number of occasions, and there's been some other indications by other senior U.S. officials, that there will be an element of bilateral discussions in these talks. That was also true in the previous negotiations as we went from NAFTA to CUSMA, but it's been more explicit and more clear. And I will say that I understand an element of that. We understand an element of that because the list of and the nature of the trade issues, so-called trade irritants, as it would be described by the United States, is quite different between Canada and Mexico. So we don't necessarily need to be at the table for the issues with Mexico. Then there's the overall architecture of the deal, and there are certain sectors, and this goes to your first part of your question, the automobile sector, which is highly integrated within North America. And those are the types of issues in Canada's judgment, Mexico's judgment, I believe ultimately in U.S. judgment, where the trilateral aspect of the talks will be.
Good morning, Prime Minister.
Morning.
JP Tasker, CBC News. Do you think that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should be removed from the line of succession?
Personally, I do, yes.
And what will you do to make that?
There's a process. There is a process in order to do it. I haven't. There's a process to define that process, but I certainly think his actions, which are deplorable and have caused him to be stripped of his royal titles, certainly merit. That's the word. Necessitate is a better word. His removal from the line of succession, even though he is well down the line of succession. I think the point of principle stands. En français, c'est oui, je crois qu'il faut changer la ligne de succession à cause de les actions déplorables de M. Mountbatten Windsor. Et puis, il y a un processus pour le faire et il faut le suivre.
We'll do a last
Merci.
question.
Last
Dernière
question.
question.
My apologies.
Sorry.
Can you expand on the message to Japanese automakers when Japan has stated that CUSMA is critical for its footprint in Canada?
Well, it's a couple of things. We'll have discussions. I should say these discussions follow up on discussions we have in Canada with their Canadian representatives, discussions, for example, the Minister of Industry had here a few months ago with them. And some of those discussions have led to certain changes in our policy. You would recall the auto strategy, which came out a few weeks ago, which included a number of things. One is substantial capital for repositioning of firms. Secondly, changes to the emission standards, achieving the same goals but with greater flexibility. It's helpful for many firms. It's very helpful for Japanese automakers because of their large proportion of hybrid vehicles and very highly fuel efficient internal combustion engine vehicles. So that was another change. The third thing which we're consulting on is a mechanism in order to have credits. You gain credits if you produce in Canada. You need a credit to sell into Canada. And this goes back to the earlier question about the structure of the CUSMA negotiations, the structure of the auto sector. And if I raise it up a level, the President of the United States has made the point several times about wanting as much production as possible in the United States for cars that are consumed in the United States, if I can put it that way. If you can consume a car, I guess you consume it over time. We can adopt that principle as well. We would do it through a market mechanism. A little over 70% of auto production in Canada is by the Japanese automakers. So they would be a beneficiary of that. It's not, it doesn't say Japanese auto, but it says if you produce in Canada and you provide the jobs and support our communities, then you benefit from it. So all of that is in the context of ensuring that our auto sector is going to be strong, it's going to be robust, regardless of any conceivable outcome of the CUSMA negotiation. Last point I'd make, which is that we view the future of automotive as being low emission, electric, and connected. And so we're seeing this as an opportunity, working with Japanese companies, working with Korean companies, working with German companies, working with other companies, the Detroit Three, as they come to it, to accelerate that transition and make the sector much more competitive, because I'll just finish on this, if I may. If one is absolutely objective about the position of the North American auto industry, it is not as competitive. It is not the most competitive auto industry. And we need large-scale investment. We need to work together, and we need to know where we're going. Canada's stepping up in order for that to happen. Other members of CUSMA are doing less. And this is an opportunity for Canadian workers, and working with Japanese companies, other companies in Asia and Europe.
France and the UK have sent preemptive troops or assets to the Middle East. Are you considering doing the same thing, sir?
I think I answered that question earlier. Thank you.
Thank you.